Good morning, everybody.
Morning, morning.
We'll start with the following image. I think it's appropriate. You can buy it from Amazon. It's a t-shirt. It says Apocalypse Roadmap. Brexit, tick. Donald Trump for president. We can now tick that. We're a couple of weeks away from a zombie apocalypse, everybody, so be prepared very possibly. I looked at some of my previous talks and I have used some very strange images and strange quotes in the past. Harry Potter makes a few appearances. Dark and difficult times lie ahead. Soon we must all face the choice between what is right and what is easy. Jaws makes an appearance. I have no idea why Jaws appeared, by the way. I looked at the PowerPoint. I don't quite understand why I would ever need to say we're going to need a bigger boat. Got through the censorship. Thank you, Annette. Disney makes a couple of appearances. Mulan being the most obvious one. DW, Doctor Who, appears every now and then. Matt Smith, 900 Years of Space and Time. I've never met anyone who wasn't important. Or, next one, Tennant, T, or possibly the best, it's debatable, but I'm right, Eccleston. Bananas, good source of potassium. The Spice Girls even made an appearance at one point, because I stood here and asked you, what do you want, what do you really want, whatever it is. And then Cheryl Cole made an appearance at one point. I think she might have been called Cheryl at the time, she might have been called Cheryl Fernandez, whatever she's called nowadays. I haven't checked the news this morning, so it could have changed. But I have never, not once, ever used a quote from the Bee Gees, which is a real shame, because they've got something to say to us, because we're living in a world of fools. What better time to show that? So, the Bee Gees told us other things as well, ones that we can do as God quotes. For instance, how deep is your love? Or, you're the light in my deepest, darkest hour. But there is also, because of today. Next one, please. Don't forget to remember. We all have memories. I think you could probably make a very strong argument to suggest that we are who we are because of our memories. That whole environment versus hereditary, nature versus nurture. Perhaps, and I think this is probably true, like Forrest Gump says, that both of these things are happening together at the same time, nature and nurture. We are who we are because of our memories. Today is Remembrance Sunday. We remember the people that died, so that we can experience the freedom that we have today. So today, quite rightly, as Tony said, and not surprisingly, I want to talk about remembering. I want to talk about memories. We have all kinds of things we remember. Some good, some bad, some fun. You need to know that my oldest three children, Philip, Hannah and Nick, are officially, to use their official title I suppose, stepchildren. There was a day though, a long time ago, when they were little, 4, 6 and 8 possibly, and they were playing out in the back garden, and Hannah turned to the two boys and said something like, Ryan, well he's like our dad, isn't he? Why don't we just call him Dad? And they came in, 4, 6 and 8 year olds, and made the declaration that from that moment on, I would be called Dad. That's a good memory. A few years later, after Stephen had been born, I remember driving back from a church event where I'd done a reading or a talk or a prayer or something, and it was just me and Stephen in the car. He'd be about 3. And he said from the back seat, Daddy, you were good tonight. Thanks, Steve, I said. And then he added, when I grow up, I want to be just like you. That's a good memory. Until moments later he said, actually, Daddy, I've changed my mind. I want to be like James Bond. Gives and takes away. Then there's Annette, my wife. I remember the day when Annette eventually said yes, she would marry me, after about 7 or 17 or 70 possible different requests. There comes a point where it's begging, by the way. But persistence does pay off. That's a good memory. Not certain Annette agrees that's a good memory. When I look in her eyes sometimes, I can see her thinking, what on earth have I done? Too late now, honey. And then there is the bad. I don't think I've ever shared this with you, but there is a bridge on the M6 toll road But when I was driving up to get to my dad, who was dying in hospital in Blackpool, my phone rang and the nurse came on the phone and asked me where I was, how far away I was, and that I needed to hurry if I was to see him alive. And hurry we did. But I was moments, minutes in fact, too late. It was what my dad would have wanted, us not being there, but that doesn't always help me. And I hate that bridge. When we're driving up to Preston on the M6 toll road, I hate that bridge. There are bad memories. Good memories and bad memories. Happy memories and sad memories. But memories. And they make us who we are. We are also who we are because of the people who've gone before us. Today on Remembrance Sunday is the ideal day to think and remember this. I've shown you this picture before. It's a famous photograph of St Paul's Cathedral during the Blitz. It is from the front of the Daily Mail, from a photograph by Herbert Mason, usually thought of as the war's greatest picture. It shows St Paul's on the night of the 29th of December 1940, standing clear through the smoke from the fires resulting from an air raid. In this photograph, you can't see it, but you know that people have lost their lives. Families are now without fathers. Wives are now without husbands. Children search the streets for their moms. We are who we are because of their sacrifice. We have all this freedom and choice in this country because of the people who've gone before us and the sacrifices they've made. It's only right and proper that we remember and honour them, thank them and respect them. Whether we agree with war or not, they have done their duty. But there, in the midst of all that war, all of that loss, stands St Paul's Cathedral. And there, on the top, if it was in colour, you would see a shining golden cross, to remind us always that no matter what, Jesus' cross is central. No matter what the world brings at us, loss, disappointment, even war and death, we can rely on Him. He will never let us down. Annette tells a story of her favourite Sunday school teacher, a lady called Miss Hargreaves. Annette loved Miss Hargreaves. I imagine the stereotypical Sunday school. I imagine something like this, very similar to our Sunday school, I think, Sally.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, identical, I think. Miss Hargreaves had a friend who suffered from Alzheimer's, and she visited her in the old people's home where she was living. She sat down next to this woman, her friend, and next to her friend, a woman started ranting and raving, using bad language, but the kind of polite bad language that really old ladies can get away with. And Miss Hargreaves turned to her and said, "Young lady," an 80-year-old talking to another 80-year-old, "Young lady, I think you should go straight to your room and go straight to bed." And the woman, so shocked by this, got up, went to her room and went to bed. But Miss Hargreaves sat next to her friend most Sundays, and again, as old ladies can, went straight to the point. "You don't really remember much anymore, do you?" To which her friend would sadly shake her head. "But you remember how much you love Jesus, don't you?" And with tears in her eyes, Miss Hargreaves' friend would say, "Ah, yes, bless him, bless him." There are some things that are important to remember. Your wife's birthday. Your mother's birthday. There's the camera. My mother's birthday is on Thursday. I haven't forgotten. Just in case I do, happy birthday, Mother, for Thursday. But more important than anything else, don't forget to remember Jesus. Remembering is something we choose to do. The following story was part of an article in a newspaper just the other week. Who Says Men Don't Remember, it was called. A couple were Christmas shopping. The shopping centre was packed, and as the wife walked around, she was surprised to discover that her husband was nowhere to be seen. She was quite upset, because they had a lot to do, and hence she became so worried that she called him on her mobile phone and asked him where he was. In a quiet voice he said, "Do you remember the jewellers we went to about 5 years ago, where you fell in love with that diamond necklace that we couldn't afford? And I told you that I would get it for you one day." The wife choked up and got all teary in the shopping centre and said, "Yes, I do remember that shop." And he replied, "Well, I'm in the pub next door to it." Choose to remember Jesus in your day-to-day thoughts, in your day-to-day actions. When Christianity turns into a noun, it becomes a turn-off. Christianity was always intended to be a verb, an action word. The title of the book, Acts, says it all, doesn't it? It's not the book of ideas or words. It's the book of Acts. And if we said less and did more, I believe we'd have the more impact like that the first century church had. And while we're on the subject, we should be more known for what we do and what we're for than what we're against. When everything is said and done, God won't say, "Well said, good and faithful servant." He won't say, "Well thought," or even "Well prayed." There's one commendation he will give, and he will say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Mother Teresa put it like this: "Let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier. Be the living expression of God's kindness. Kindness in your face, kindness in your eyes, kindness in your smile." We are called to do something. Mahatma Gandhi said, "Be the change you wish to see in the world." No matter how small a difference it sometimes feels we are making, we are still making a difference. And we know where to start. Even Michael Jackson told us about changing, and he should know, starting with the man in the mirror. As the Bible notes say, remember, it's more than just sitting back and having happy or sad thoughts and reflections. Remember, it's a doing word, because you remember this, now do this. Other commandments need remembering though. How about Colossians 3 verse 13? Forgive as the Lord forgave you. We are told we can rely on him because he cares for us. 1 Peter chapter 5 verse 7 says, "Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you." It's hard. It's a hard thing to remember when we're going through hard times. It is difficult when we face difficulties. But he promises to be with us. He promises us that he will always be with us. And that's a promise to hold on to. That's something to remember. Isaiah 49 verse 15 says, "I will not forget you. See, I have engraved you on the palms of my hands." Have you ever seen the TV show Tattoo Fixers? It's either the best TV show in the world or the worst. It's made up of people who have more or less gone to Ibiza or places like that, had too many shandies, and gone off and got a tattoo. One that they sort of regret. Things like, next one please, never don't give up. Never give up, but don't give up. But never don't give up. Or things like, I'm awesome. I think they're missing the letter E from the word awesome. That's not massively awesome. God, for want of a better expression, has engraved you, tattooed you on the palm of his hands. He will never forget you. He will not erase the tattoo. Today, more than any other day, we take the time to remember and be thankful. But we as Christians should know and remember that even greater, the best sacrifice of all, the sacrifice we should remember every day, the sacrifice of Jesus Christ on the Roman cross. What Christ did just for you. He has your name tattooed and engraved forever. That is his love for each of us, and we are called to remember. Remember the promises spelt out through the Bible and the words of Christ. Remember the sacrifice of God's broken, beaten, bloodied body on the cross. And remember, most importantly of all, that Jesus did it for each and every one of us. We're going to take communion. Stephen's going to play us some music and then lead us in a song or two. But listen to the words used by Paul in the book of Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 23 to 25 says, "The Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.' In the same way after supper, he took the cup, saying, 'This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this whenever you drink it in remembrance of me.'" When we listen to the words used in communion, we hear Jesus telling his disciples, those back then 2,000 years ago, and us today, that his blood is spilt for us, and his body is broken for us, and we are to remember him for this. Remember the sacrifice he made, always. Not just on a Sunday morning, always. And because he has sacrificed himself for us, so we should sacrifice ourselves for others. Remember and do. We remember that Christ died on the cross so that all the sins of everyone who comes to him are forgiven. Everyone. Did you notice everyone can come to Christ? It is our choice. Everyone can be forgiven. And that's fantastic because the book of Romans says, for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. Not just a few, all. What do we deserve? We've sinned in the sight of a perfect God. Imagine the worst possible punishment. We deserve worse. What do we get though? We get grace. We get compassion. We get a loving God on the cross, telling us with each lash of the whip, every hammer of the nail, every broken bone and drop of perfect, sinless, spilt blood, that he loves us. He loves everyone. Everyone needs love and grace and forgiveness. And with Christ, everyone can get it. We're all beautifully different, and yet in some respects, tragically the same. We're all fallen. What we do about it is up to us. God gives us a choice. As we take communion now and we remember, know that it is not just remember, it is remember and do. Talk about it. Love as he would love. Act as he would act. Remember and do. Thank you, Stephen.